Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Don from 1A Auto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And the next time you need a part for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the coolant elbow that comes out of the serpentine belt tensioner and goes into the cylinder head. It's going to be basically the same operation for a 97 through 99 LeSabre with the 3.8 liter engine. The items you're going to need are a new belt tensioner coolant elbow from 1A Auto, a 10, 13, and 15 millimeter socket wrench, pry bar, 8 millimeter wrench, a hook tool, and a coolant drain pan. I'm using an 8 millimeter wrench to remove the negative terminal on the battery. Pushing it off to the side. The belt tensioner pulley is right below the alternator being here being the belt tensioner, and I'm going to use a 15 millimeter socket and socket wrench to loosen up the tension on the belt. Once I've got that, slide it off the alternator pulley and the rest of the pulleys. Here I'm pointing out the nuts and bolts that hold in the alternator that we're going to remove. Those are 13 millimeters. There's 3 of them. And then on the back side of the alternator, there's a 10 millimeter bolt that holds there the bracket to the alternator. I'm removing the 13 millimeter nuts that hold the alternator to the engine. I'm going to fast forward the video while I remove those 3 nuts and bolts that hold the alternator in. Underneath the coils, there's another nut that holds this bracket into place, and we need to remove that nut so that we can access the nut and stud right here. Once you get that nut loose, you can either let the bar hang, kind of keep it out of your way, or you can completely remove it. On the back side of the alternator, I'm going to remove this 13 millimeter nut, the harness that goes to it. I'm just going to wrest it out of the way. Remove the 13 millimeter here. Now we're going to remove the 10 millimeter on the back side. Now you can go ahead and lift out your alternator. And on the back side, you'll see a clip with the wiring harness. Disconnect that. And pull your alternator out. Under the front spoiler, you're going to find the splash pan, and there's several 10 millimeter bolts that hold the splash pan in. And remove a few of those, like 3 or 4 of them, to get access to the underside of the radiator where the coolant drain is. And I'm going to fast forward as I remove those. Once you have the 10 millimeters down and you can gain access, if you feel like you need further access, there's a couple 7 millimeter screws that are held here, and just by removing these and getting it totally out of the way, it might benefit you in that the coolant isn't going to splash against the pan before it gets into your container. Here I'm feeling around for the plastic drain plug. You're going to want to turn it. You can use a pair of pliers if you need to. When the coolant comes out, it's going to come out that hole at the bottom of the radiator where we're looking, and you're going to want a coolant catch pan or something to catch the coolant as it's coming out. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward while I drain the coolant out. And with our coolant drained out, we can go ahead and put the splash pan back in place and secure it with the 10 and 7mm screws we took out. On the tensioner, there are two 8mm screws that hold the coolant pipes in. We're going to remove those two 8mm screws. Wiggle your pipe back and forth, pulling it up at the same time. And pull it out and set it aside. Same for the bottom. And the other hose, might need to use something for leverage to kind of free it up. And once you get the pipe free and out, go ahead and rest it to the side and make sure that you've got a drain pan underneath to catch any leftover coolant. Locate the two 13mm bolts, one down here and the other is back behind here. Here I'm pointing out the coolant pipe that goes into the block. This is actually part of the casting of the tensioner, so we got to work that free. Using a screwdriver in between the tensioner and the block, just trying to work it free. And as you pull the tensioner out, you'll see how the coolant flows through the tensioner casting, through the elbow on the right hand side and then out through the bottom. In this case, you can see that the elbow was cracked and it's still a portion of it is inside the head, so we're going to have to get that out with a hook tool. And it's tough to see, but down inside of here you can see where the elbow broke inside. Now I'm going to use a small hook tool to pull it out. The O-ring. The hook tool wasn't enough to get the broken piece from coming out. It's kind of seized in there, seated. So I'm going to use a small blade screwdriver, a little hammer, give it a little tap. Try and free it up. Okay. I'm going to go back in with the pick tool. And pull that out. And this was just an FYI, you may or may not experience this issue with the elbow. If you find that your tensioner is fine, but it's just your elbow that you need to replace because the seals have gone bad or it's cracked, we can do that. 1A Auto stocks new elbow. It's just simple as pulling it out and putting the new piece in. Here's the old part and the new part from 1A Auto. The new part comes with the new elbow. For the sake of this video, we're going to show you the installation with the new part, but if you're just doing the elbow by itself, it's the same. I want to make sure that the surfaces where my seals are going to be sitting is clean. So run your finger inside, make sure that that's okay, as well as in here with this elbow. On your new tensioner, you're going to want to make sure that your gasket is on. You've got your elbow with the two gaskets. You can go ahead and put in one side of the elbow, seat that, and go ahead and put tensioner back inside in place. Line everything up and press in. And here I'm going to reinstall the first of the two 13mm bolts that hold the tensioner in place. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward while I reinstall and tighten up those 13mm bolts. I'm going to reinstall the other 13mm. It goes on the bottom, right underneath the tensioner here. And now I'm going to replace the seal on the end of the top hose and on the bottom hose. And I'm just going to use a pick tool to pick them out. Here I'm using a small pocket flathead screwdriver to run it through the groove on the pipe so that the seal sits nice and flush. Fit your new seal. On the other side. And then we can press them in. Reinstall the 8mm nut bolts that hold the coolant pipes to the tensioner. And I'm going to go ahead and fast forward while I reinstall those bolts. Reinstalling the alternator. Go ahead and start your bolts. Now I'm going to put the cable on the back, secure that. Reinstall the 10mm on the back side of the alternator. Reinstall your bracket. If you took it off or re-secured it, you let it hang. And then plug your harness back in, back on the back side of the alternator.
Yeah, and before you get to putting the belt back on, here's just a quick look at the belt diagram. If your belt has fallen off the pulleys, this will just help you get it back on there correctly.
Line your belt back up on the pulleys, put it over the alternator, leave it off of the idler pulley, and then proceed to pull up and snake the belt back onto the idler pulley. Here you see the belt up over the alternator, tensioner pulley, water pump, crank, AC compressor, and power steering pump. Remove your radiator cap. Refill your coolant. Reconnect the battery.
We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.oneauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.